Hey everybody, Kenny Wisdom here, and welcome to another edition of Expanded Friday. This week we're going over my pick for Arizona Regionals if I was playing, which is the Accelgor Wobbuffet deck. Firstly, let me explain. I'm not playing in the event. I actually have a wedding to go to tomorrow, which is when this goes up, it'll be tomorrow. So I wasn't actually able to play in the event, but I did a lot of testing with various people, with a lot of the group that I test with, and I determined that I would probably be playing this deck if I went to the tournament. And I kind of wanted to go over the deck with you guys a little bit. Also have a Cutter Tap article coming out about the deck, and we talked a little bit about the deck on the episode of Experience Share that'll be out tomorrow by the time you hear this at expshare.net. So I thought I would just go over the deck a little bit. Accelgor is a strategy that's been around for a long time. I think my first experience with the Accelgor deck was at Nationals 2012 when I played Accelgor Chandelure Vileplume, which was basically an Accelgor deck with an item lock and then a damage manipulation. That deck eventually became Accelgor Vileplume Dusknoir, Accelgor Gothitelle Dusknoir, etc. And that deck was all about basically having the hard lock on your opponent. So what you would do is you would set up in Accelgor, you'd have a Vileplume, you'd deck and cover, and you'd say, okay, well now you can't retreat because you're paralyzed. You can't use any kind of max potions or anything, or switches because I have a Vileplume out. And I am using Dusknoir to perfectly manipulate damage so that you will never get knocked out until I want you to. So you'll get knocked out going into my turn, or I'll move the damage around and knock things out on your bench. That's not exactly what we're doing here. As you can see, we have a much smaller Pokemon suite, and we're mainly focused on Wobbuffet. So this list that I'm actually looking at is Ross Cawthon's from regionals last year. I've been testing a few different lists. In my Cutter Tap article, I go over kind of the different things that I would try, and because I couldn't go to the event, I'm actually not sure what 60 I would settle on. But I think if you're going to start testing the deck, this is a good place to start. And this is basically focused around the idea that it's no longer reasonable to set up that full lock. You no longer can set up these stage twos. There's other decks that are doing that kind of thing better, and we just want to be able to kind of Accelgor them, promote the Wobbuffet, stop them from doing any kind of shaman shenanigans or using their abilities at all. And just kind of put them in a soft lock that way where, yeah, they have outs, they can get out of it, but we are putting them in a really tough position. In order to kind of deal with this, we have one Shaman just going to let us draw some cards. We can Sky Return. We can copy Sky Return with Mew if we need to. But even though we are running a Wobbuffet and we're really heavy on kind of locking abilities out, we still need Shaman just because it's the most aggressive draw card there is. We see the 4/4 line of Accelgor there. You need to reset Accelgor a lot because you can't always attack with a Mew, and if you attack with an Accelgor, it's going to go right into your deck. So you often want to be able to set up 2 Accelgors and maybe start working on a third if you ever have to use another one. You kind of always want to have 2 up. And then the star of the show is the Mew. So we have 2 copies, and basically, Mew is what allows you to stream the Accelgor. So you can imagine that if you had to set up a new Accelgor every turn, this deck wouldn't really work out. But with Mew, you can use Versatile to copy deck and cover and leave an Accelgor on the bench. Like I said, sometimes you can't always find the Mew and you need to attack with Accelgor, but to help us find things, we have Musharna. So Musharna's forewarn ability lets us look at the top 2 cards of our deck and pick one, and I'll be completely honest with you, there was a time back when we ran this deck at Nationals 2012 where Musharna was really important because your deck would get very, very thin. Not only were you playing things like Professor Juniper, but you also had Sage's training and, the kind of, in order to set up the complete lock, because again, remember, back then we had Chandelure, we didn't even have Dusknoir, so we couldn't actually put up a hard lock. Our Chandelure rather, only allowed us to move damage counters around in groups of 3, so we couldn't exactly be perfect. And so what you would do is to set up the hardest lock you could is you would have 2 cards left. You had no cards left in your deck. You would deck and cover and then put 2 cards back, the DCE and the Mew, and then you would draw 1 for your turn, use Forewarn to find the other one. This would actually come back to bite Ross Cawthon when he lost a really tense match versus Jason Klaczynski in the Swiss when Jason used Miss Magius's double draw to make both players draw 2 cards and Ross lost the game. But Nowadays, you can't really do that. Now, I found that I really want to try to cut them with Sharna. I've experimented with a few other things just because you have all these powerful draw supporters and your deck just doesn't get as thin. You know, you're relying on things like N, sometimes just super rod things back, and it just seems like you can never get down to the point where your deck is, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. I would still recommend running at least one copy of it because it is really powerful, and you'll probably see in the videos there are times where it saves me, but it's definitely not as big of a powerhouse as it used to be. And moving on from that, the only other Pokemon we have is Wobbuffet. Now, if you look at the rest of the items and supporters, it's all pretty standard. We've got 4 Juniper, really want to be discarding things. Teammates is huge for grabbing the things that you need. Versus Seeker, of course, comes in 4. Ultra Ball is 3 because we're running 2 level balls. We have a Verbank City Gym to kind of boost the damage, which is actually kind of an interesting factor about this deck. So it really takes a lot of thinking, not so much game to game, because hopefully after you've played enough with it, you can kind of think through the numbers quickly, but you always want your opponent's Pokemon to get knocked out going back into your turn. And so there are definitely times where you do not want to play a Verbank City, or you want to hold it off for a turn or two because you want to make sure that the math works out correctly, favorably for you, so that the Pokemon gets knocked out going back into your turn. So definitely something to think about before you start picking up the deck. Other than that, everything's pretty standard. The Mystery Energy, it can be interesting. I don't actually really like it. That's a card that I've also experimented with cutting, but it's just probably the best energy you have that's not DCE, and of course you can only run 4 DCE. So the advantage of this deck. So the big advantage of this deck is, like I said, is it presents a lock to your opponent. So there's lots of decks and lots of, hands and situations you just can't get out of this. You're just going to deck and cover them forever. Yeah, you may go down 1, 2, 3 prizes, and then you'll completely lock them out of the game. The other thing is that it has a surprise factor. Even though Accelgor's been around, it hasn't been a top tier deck for quite a few years, and there's probably a lot of players playing at regionals who have never really played against the deck. Additionally, I think that it's kind of competing on a different axis than anyone else, so it's definitely not something that's going to be hated out or something that people are going to tech against you for. The downsides to the deck, which there are some, the biggest one I think is that it has a really hard time if it doesn't win game 1. So the deck is very slow, and how you're going to win most of your matches is by winning a 30-minute, 35-minute game 1, and then maybe taking a game 2, or more than likely game 2 doesn't finish and you win the match 1-0. If you happen to be in a position where you lose game 1 in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then you win game 2, you can barely hang on and win game 2 at the 45th minute, well, that match probably is going to finish, and if it does, it's not going to finish in favor, at least. So that's the bad part about the deck. The other thing is that there are cards that can really hurt you. Pokemon Center Lady, if your opponent is playing one and can kind of recur it constantly. With Versus Seeker, it's going to be really rough for you. AZ is tough, although with AZ, they do have to discard the energy, so they can't really AZ forever. But if they can set up favorable AZs where they're kind of maybe building something onto the bench, and then they AZ their active, and then maybe for like Eviltal is the perfect deck that I think about with this, where they build up an Eviltal on the bench, they AZ their active before it gets knocked out, and then they hit you, move the energy to the bench, and kind of restart that process. It can be really tough. Regardless, I think the deck is very strong. I think that it is probably not the strongest deck in the format, but it's a deck that I really like to play, and I think it has a lot going for it, so that's why I would play it. And if you want to learn more about the specifics of the deck, definitely check out my Cutter Tap article at cuttertap.com, and which will be up tomorrow, and the Experience Share podcast, which will be up tomorrow as well. So we're going to play a few games with this and see how it goes. Hey everybody, Kenny Wisdom here, bringing you a match from the Accelgor deck. Boom, we're going to get to go first. That's pretty big as we rely on evolution, so yes, I would like to go first. And let's see what we're up against. Okay, hand is reasonable. We're going to go ahead and start Wobbuffet here. And then put a Shelmet onto the bench. And let's just start our turn. Mewtwo, okay. So this is going to go ahead and get another Shelmet for us. We'll play like this, and then let's go ahead and end. Let's go ahead and use long distance hypnosis. Tails, that's too bad, but we have a pretty good shot of waking up. And next turn we can find a Mew, attach the DCE, start Accelgoring. So let's go ahead and pass the turn. If we do stay asleep, it's going to be pretty rough for us, but depending on what our opponent's playing, we can always afford to take a turn off, especially if we can hit another long distance hypnosis flip and maybe put them in a rough spot. All right, they got a Steven off the Trainer's Mail. Still not sure what our opponent's playing. Just Trainer's Mail, Steven, Mewtwo doesn't really tell us much, but hopefully we'll learn soon. So Mewtwo is an interesting card to play against because we can copy Mewtwo. Ooh, Team Flare Gun, all right. So Team Flare Gun shouldn't be too relevant really because we are, we can have multiple energy attached, but we don't really need to. Oh, we stay to sleep. All right, that's rough. Long distance hypnosis can't hurt, but we do get Tails again. And I think at this point, we are just going to ship the turn back. I don't really want to play the Mew to get it exposed. I'd rather kind of fake a bad hand to our opponent. Our opponent has a Team Flare Gun in hand, so it's not like they're doing a whole lot. All right, please wake up. Okay. So we do need to find a way to retreat this guy, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Let's go ahead and Ultra Ball N and Accelgor. Get a Mew. Play it onto the bench. Attach to it. And VS Seeker for the N. And let's find ourselves a... Oh, we did not find a way to retreat. Okay. That's not the best thing that's ever happened. Let's hope our long distance hypnosis hits. It doesn't, but we're going to get knocked out next turn anyway, so it's not too relevant. Pass the turn back. We've gotten a little bit unlucky in this game. Hitting those sleep flips is not, or sleep tails rather, was not great, and not being able to find a floatstone there was not great either, but our opponent doesn't really have much going on. Well, this doesn't seem great for them because we can go ahead and Mew. Let's attach and let's X-Ball. And that's going to hit them for the knockout. So they just didn't really have much there, and I'm assuming they're just hoping that we didn't hit anything. Not really indicative of how the deck plays, but it was indicative of how the deck can be a little bit fragile sometimes. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you for the next game. Hey guys, Kenny Wisdom here for another match with the Accelgor deck. Our opponent Monster Record is going to go ahead and call the flip. Ooh, we lost the flip. All right, so losing the flip is never good, especially when you're playing an evolution deck that relies on getting kind of a lot of things to going and a lot of evolutions out. So we're going to see what happens here. Starting with Mana is not our ideal starter, but it's not the worst possible result either. Let's see what our opponent's got cooking. Darkrai Sleeves tells me Darkness deck, maybe? Let's see what happens. Taking some time to select their Pokemon on the bench. Our hand is not great. Unless our opponent fills their bench, we're likely just Colress or Junipering this away. Ooh, Deoxys. Alright, we're playing a Plasma deck. Interesting. Let's see what they've got cooking. So Plasma was a deck that was really popular a few seasons ago and kind of used the Plasma gimmick. Deoxys you'd use for its power connectability mostly to kind of boost damage. You'd use things like Kyurem and Lugia and Thundurus. Yeah, it looks like... Ooh, our opponent just attaches and passes. Okay. So Floatstone was a good draw there. Let's go ahead and go like this. We're not going to be able to attack anyway, so let's Hypnosis and see what happens. Alright, we hit heads. That's pretty nice. Yeah, we just have to Juniper away our hand. Can't really wait on anything else. Getting rid of the DC is not great there, but not many other options. Let's go ahead and retreat this little guy into Wobbuffet. And not a whole lot going on that's great, actually. We don't have a Shelmet out. We don't have, any Mews out or anything. We do have the ability to play a supporter again next turn and try to rebuild, but I really would have liked to have seen Shelmets there. Another Plasma Energy on the Thunderous. And a pass. Are we just going to see a pass? Floatstone, alright. They just pass a turn. They do wake up. Mystery Energy. Geez, I really don't want to have to Juniper all this stuff away, but I'm not really sure that I have another option. Let's go ahead and try for a Hypnosis. Alright, hits us. Not the worst thing in the world. Geez. I guess we just have to. I don't really see another out. I don't really want to attach any of this stuff to any of these guys, just in case we... Well, I guess I can actually attach like this, because I won't need to attach this turn, and if we don't get knocked out, I'll want to be able to have a surefire way to retreat. Let's save that next turn to get an Accelgor. Let's play the mana. Let's try to put this puppy to sleep. Alright, that might be able to buy us some time, and let's pass the turn. We woke up and our opponent woke up. Alright. So let's see what our opponent can do. They still only have 4 cards in hand. Didn't play supporter last turn, so even though they woke up now, there could be not a whole lot going on from their side. Discarding a Floatstone and a Psychic to get a off the Ultra Ball. Getting a Mewtwo EX. Okay, sounds reasonable. Might be just playing that and then playing a Juniper, although they would have had to draw it this turn. Nope, there we go. Alright. So now their hand is reset. We are stumbling pretty badly, and they are back in full force. Let's see how they can... let's see what they can do with this hand. Building up that Thunderous. They do have energy in there. Yeah, they just discarded it off the Ultra Ball. There's a Raiden Knuckle. Let's level ball for an Accelgor. And then I think we just have to do the Juniper again because we don't want to risk not hitting what we need here. Geez, we still did not hit. Okay, actually we can forewarn. So let's go ahead and forewarn. Hopefully hit either a Mew or a DCE. Neither. Okay. Let's go ahead and take the Shelmet. We can computer search. We can computer search Wobbuffet and Lysander. Find a double colorless. Attach like this. Oh, it's actually just attached like this. Yeah, that's fine. And then deck and cover. Re-promote the Wobbuffet. And let's see what our opponent can do. So we will need to kind of string together some things. We're going to play the N next turn and hopefully find an Accelgor and then Mew DCE. We can keep hitting with the Accelgor, but of course we'll have to kind of rebuild every turn, so that's not where we want to be. Hard Charm the Deoxys. Oh, there's an N from our opponent. Okay, so maybe that can help us here, getting us some free card draw. There's the Accelgor and Ultra Ball at least, so definitely did a lot for us. And does our opponent have anything going on? They played a Rayquaza, Thundurus. They're building up this Mewtwo. Whoops. All right, there's a Shaman. Not going to help us out too much there. Let's play this. Play this here. Let's... Actually, we have the ability to get to Mew, so let's just do that. Play it onto the bench. Let's use Forewarn. Alright, let's take Wobbuffet, and then let's just Versus Seeker for a Colress. Colors for a bunch of cards. Wow, we are swimming in Accelgors here. Alright, let's attach like this. Let's retreat this guy, promote here, and yeah, let's just go ahead and use deck and cover. We'll be taking a knockout after the poison goes in effect, and we are going to be taking 2 prizes, while our opponent still has 6, and our opponent does have that Deoxys built up, but their board's not actually great, so I think we're actually advantaged here. There's still a lot of ways this game can go. We can still draw dead, but we're sitting in a pretty reasonable spot. All right, Bianca going to go ahead and draw them 2 cards. Our opponent definitely not playing the kind of classic plasma deck. They're doing a lot of other stuff with it, but that's all right. Promote the free retreat, Accelgor. Drop the Mew. Let's see. So if we hit it with the Mew, we're going to do 130, and it'll be 160 going back into our turn. So there's no difference. Although if we did this, we do 50, 80, 110, 40. Oh, actually, so that's different, right? So 50 from here plus 30 from the tool. So it's going to be 80. 111, 12, 13, 14. I don't want to actually matter. Okay, so let's just attach here. I'm actually going to drop... I actually should drop this Wobbuffet, rather. That would have been a pretty big mistake. Let's go ahead and Forewarn, just so we can find what we need. Retreat. Send up the Mew. Deck and cover. Once again, we send up the Wobbuffet that has a float stone on it. Opponent goes to 130. Unfortunately, with this so far with Pokemon we played against, we haven't been able to kind of math them out to where they get knocked out going into our turn. But you can see the power of the deck even without having the hard lock. You know, we are just pretty far ahead in this game, despite having sort of a slow start. It's possible that we should have ended there. Our opponent had a big hand, and the problem is that we also have a big hand. We have a big hand full of stuff that we can't really play. So we don't really want that back in our deck because we want to be able to redraw our Mews, but we also want to put our opponent on as few cards as possible so that they can't draw things like Pokemon Center Lady and AZ. So I think it was right not to end there, especially because we're at 4 cards, but I definitely think there are spots similar to that where you would want to end, and I think you should always kind of keep that in mind. Both that you want to keep your deck thin and that you want to make sure that your opponent doesn't have too many cards in hand. And we're basically fine with our opponent playing anything that's not in AZ or Colress, in AZ or Pokemon Center Lady. Like, yeah, Colress helps them. It's going to help them get cards. It's going to help them kind of be prepared once we take our next knockout, but it's nothing we need to be too concerned about. And pass back to us. Play this here. Let's evolve. Let's go ahead and take a Forewarn ability. And now we're going to have to go ahead and end here. So let's hope that we find a DCE. We are shuffling a lot of cards back. All right, there's a DCE. Pretty solid. I don't expect that we're going to have to deck. Oh, we actually don't have any more Musharna. I should have checked that, but that's fine. We can grab another Wobbuffet for later. I was going to say we should grab a Musharna and just kind of start cycling those abilities, but didn't quite work out that way, but that's alright. There's a deck and cover. Gonna go ahead and take the knockout. We're at 2 prizes. We just need to find a way to close out the game. Hopefully we'll find it off of our prizes here. Alright, end's not the best draw either, is 0-6, but we do have a kind of a steady prize deficit on our opponent, so hopefully it won't matter too much. Tierno. It's the 4th energy. Gonna go ahead and take a knockout. That's not too big of a deal to us. We're gonna go ahead and send up this Accelgor. DCE one time? No, okay. That's fine. Well, wait. So we need to find Mew DCE. We can Ultra Ball like this. We are giving up the ability to have Wobbuffet then, but we're pretty close to closing out the game, so I'm not too concerned about that. Let's play this and then forewarn. Did find the DCE. That's a nice draw there. Attach. Retreat. At this point, I am just going to play the N. We don't really want to draw it at this point, and I'd rather put our opponent to low cards. Additionally, it's going to allow me to attach here and then send up this mana after the deck and cover here. So our opponent, oh actually no, our opponent's just at 170, yeah, so unless they find a way out of this, they're just gonna have to pass the turn. I thought they had hard charm this guy, but I guess they hard charm the Deoxys, yeah. Just gonna go ahead and pass and get knocked out, I guess, and they could have something, they could have a switch or Pokemon Center lady, yep, no, there it is, right on time. Not too big of a deal though, if we just need to draw out of this position and we should be okay. We do have 2 Accelgors in case our opponent does anything tricky. We don't have a Mew on board, so they can't take an EX prize like that, so not a huge deal. And if we can attack with a Mew, that'll be even better, and that'll just do straight up 100. Pointed at 3 prizes. And DC. Okay, let's go ahead and forewarn. Whoops, no, let's go ahead and forewarn. Nice, okay, so that should be the game. We're gonna go ahead and attach here. Deck and cover. It's gonna hit our opponent for 80 because of the silver bangle, and then they're gonna take damage off the poison, and that's gonna be our last 2 prizes. So we are victorious. So hope that was a good example of how the games go for you guys. I think, again, the game can be kind of monotonous and boring, so I didn't want to show too many. So hopefully being able to show you rather one version of how the game can go and then another version of how the game can go if you win would help. I'm really excited to see what happens in Arizona. I know there are some players who are considering this deck, although it's certainly not a top choice for a lot of players. So we'll have to see how the deck goes, and we'll be back here on Monday to explore some standard decks.